Yes, sir. Welcome back.
Welcome back, baby, to another episode of Life After Addiction.
I'm excited today.
And we have, does the camera angle look different now, right? Anytime we have a
not
guest?
yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Well,
It looks
I might
the
have
same.
just given away
But
a
we have a
secret.
guest. Thank you for ruining it. We had a big fireworks and everything. We're going to go off, but now next week, save them.
Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Do you believe in life after addiction? You better believe it. Now, the host of Life After Addiction.
Hey, guys. Awesome. Thank you for being with us. We've had a few good episodes, man. I think I've enjoyed doing it. I think some good information. We did a reaction video, but today we want to talk, I don't know, I'm trying to think who this would be for. And I think it's for everyone. But I think this could be a really good episode for people in ministry, people that want to get started in ministry or give resources to a ministry or church. Today we have Pastor Carl Ubenius with us. Welcome, Carl.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah. So, man, I'm excited. I want to tell everybody about you and everything. Carl is one of our newest on the team at S2L. He is our chief growth officer. I have a hard time saying that. Our CGO. Carl, tell them a little bit about where you come from, where you've been, and what led you to S2L.
Yeah, for sure. So, my background is pretty diverse. I call myself like a corporate mutt because I've done a lot of different things. But I've worked with Fox when Fox was like the brand new network coming on the scene. That was when they told us that.
Are you aging yourself a little bit right now?
Yes, I am. I just dated myself for sure. But it was a fascinating thing to see that what everybody says you can't do can be done. Because I was at that point. I've worked with Viacom. I've worked with Univision, the Spanish language television station. There's Univision and there's Telemundo. Again, Univision was, when I worked with them, they were coming up in a different way than they had in the past. And then I spent some time with Hallmark Channel Latin America.
Yeah.
It is not the card store. Everybody thinks that's the card store.
Yeah.
But believe it or not, Hallmark is owned by a company called Crown Media, and the Crown Media owns the network. And so they developed a network worldwide, and I was the vice president of Latin America.
Wow.
And the funny thing about that is I am Hispanic, and my Spanish stinks. And so what were they thinking, putting a guy like me as VP of...
He's pretty humble. I would imagine his Spanish is pretty good, but maybe in comparison to some. But
Yeah. And so, that was a time where God really got a hold of my life. We had some real big family issues, and God just, He saved my family. He saved my soul. And, I just decided, I'm going to turn my back on the corporate world, and I just want to serve the Lord. And so, I pastored a church called the Well Miami for about 12 years.
Oh, wow, Miami.
In Miami. It was a very interesting ministry down there.
Hang on, let me stop you for just a second. I'm sorry. I got to connect the dots for the people listening. So a few weeks ago, we had two young men in studio that we interviewed, and they had a similar story about Miami. Those were your two kids. We interviewed One Common.
That's right.
So just so you know, One Common, Carl is the father of One Common Mike and Los, Michael and Los. So they told us a little story. I don't know if you watched that episode,
watched it.
But they told us a little insight about you, that you would pull them out to evangelize, and you were on fire for the Lord, and you sold everything and drove around. That's pretty.
People thought
cool.
we were crazy.
That was pretty cool. But sorry, go ahead. Now you can connect the dot.
There it is. And so, after that time as a pastor in Well Miami, we went on the road, like you said, sold my house, bought a 38-foot RV, didn't even know how to drive it. And let me tell you, you want to talk about what's good for your prayer life? Buy an RV and not know how to drive it.
They left that detail out.
But by the grace of God, we were safe. My biggest concern, guys, was that I didn't hurt somebody.
Yeah.
This thing's like so heavy and big, and it doesn't stop easy. My big prayer was, Lord, just don't let me hurt
They just let you
anybody.
buy it? You didn't have to do anything?
That's what I was thinking.
That's awesome.
I'm like, this is irresponsible of them to hand me the keys to this thing.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was a great time. We spent about 6 months on the road, and man, God really grew us, and we just kind of said, Lord, just do what you want with us. And so when we came back, I pastored on staff at Calvary Chapel, Lake Norman, and Calvary Chapel, Lake Norman is doing a lot of good work. But one of the things I'm really proud of is they have the Life Center there, and so I think it's like a 20,000 square foot building that they are putting together just for single moms and those moms who choose life.
Wow.
It's a great ministry. And so after that, I spent some time with a COO with a national pro-life ministry called Love Life.
Yeah.
And their whole role was to unite the church, mobilize the church to help bring an end to the abortion and the orphan crisis. And so I've done quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to be here because, you know, when I worked at the radio station for a bit, the Christian radio station,
worked at the
I had
radio
some
station too.
clients that really caught my attention. And there's two crazy guys, Adam and Ron. And I just thought to myself as I'm servicing their account, I'm like, these guys are doing what's deep in my heart. They are bringing families back together. The more I learned about what S2L did, the more I understood it's not just about sobriety. You know, it's obviously about bringing men to salvation, but you guys are doing things that this world needs right now, and that's helping men take their place, their God-given place, as the leaders and the pastors of their homes.
Yeah.
And when I've heard you give me this stat about, you know, like five guys being ordained in the church after coming through the program, boy, man, this is a work of God. And so that's why when we talked, I was so glad to come on.
Yeah, when this airs about a month ago, we had our alumni weekend. I think all 5 of those pastors came back and were at worship night or golf. So men, thank you for that. So obviously you could see why, as God called Carl to S2L with his background in ministry, but also in the corporate world and his leadership, this is a perfect fit. And so we've charged Carl with a very unique task, and I want you to talk about it a little bit. So we asked Carl, we kind of brainstormed. We got together and we're like, hey, what should we do here? And we realized, man, it really doesn't make sense that every church in Middle Tennessee doesn't know about S2L and the resource. And then obviously with the big picture stuff, well, if that's the case, what about the whole country? They need to know about S2L, or at least about why an S2L type place is where they should send their people. And so you've been on a mission now for a little while. You've developed programs, resources. We're going to talk about some of this. But you've been meeting with churches. You've been meeting with pastors. You have a presentation and things like that that you've developed. What are you seeing that's affecting the church for the most part? What kind of stuff? Because I know you've done research too. You've talked with people. What's affecting the Capital C Church? Because we haven't aimed at one denomination. We're meeting with all sorts of denominations. Just the Capital C Church. What are you seeing? What are some of the things that you're seeing?
Well, we have this documentary, right? The Forgotten Pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's how many years ago did you guys make it?
Award-winning.
Award-winning, right?
Documentary.
The award-winning. How many years ago did you make that?
It was after the pandemic, hence the name. We play on the words. I guess about 3 now. I think it's been out 3, but it's only been public for about a month or 3 weeks.
Wow. Well, here's the thing that I noticed with that documentary. It is as relevant today as it was when you made it 3 years ago. And
No
that
doubt.
says something, because we live in a world of rapid change, constantly everybody's putting out different production pieces, et cetera. But when people see that, they realize that's where we're at right now. And so in some respects, not only was it for such a time as this when you made it,
Right.
but in some respects it was prophetic, because what I'm realizing is when I speak to pastors and when I speak to church leaders and when I speak with churches, is that the pandemic is forgotten in their minds for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Let me explain what I mean by that. A lot of pastors that I have spoken with are very glad to get this information. Why? Because they didn't know it while this is happening. So this pandemic of addiction and drug abuse has grown so much that it's affecting the church in ways that if a pastor is not all over it, it's going to consume his church.
Yeah.
And so I'll share things with them, like, if you looked at the addiction.com studies that talk about the 4 different sections.
Lois, could you pull up some of the graphics from Addiction?
Yeah, that'd be good. So we have the atheists, we have agnostics, we have Catholic, and we have Protestant. And if you look at the different drug use amongst all those 4 categories, you're going to see a pattern. And it's the same in the church.
Yeah,
There
that's
is
crazy.
no difference.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you would think, it's honestly not a shock to me, but I've been in this space for over a decade, and I could tell you that. But to hear that there's really no difference between atheists, agnostics, Catholics, and Protestants when it comes to drug addiction, that shocks a lot of people.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. This statistic shocks them a lot as well. 15% of Protestants have claimed to be high in church.
Yeah.
Now, I've shared that stat with a few people in this organization that know a lot, and they say to me that's probably underreported. And I believe it, because anytime you see these type of reporting, it's going to be underreported.
Oh, way underreported.
Right. But even that number.
I'm not proud of that. I'm not proud of this, but I got high at church
Really?
with my wife. You know,
Really?
not with my wife. I was at church with my wife, and I would go to the bathroom, and yeah, I mean,
Wow.
every Sunday. And that's not something boastful. It's very shameful, but I would imagine I'm not the only one, especially people that are wearing the mask and everything's fine, and I got to keep
Right.
up appearances. I'm at church on Sunday. Yeah, I would imagine that's pretty common.
That's right.
Way more common than 15%.
Right. I'm curious. Did you hide that from the pastor? Is that something that
yeah.
you kind of hid?
Oh yeah.
So like the pastor would never have known, right?
No. I would get up and go to this was so long ago, but I remember it because it's such a shameful thing, man, to desecrate the house of the Lord like that, the house of God, where there's words being taught and people are worshiping. I did a lot of awful things, but that's one of the most shameful. Just about every time I was there, and because my wife's father was a pastor of the church, so we were there all the time. We had to be there. I would get up in the middle of service, in the middle of the sermon, to use the bathroom, and I would go to a certain bathroom of the church. I know it was a single bathroom; no one was going to walk in, and I would get high.
Wow.
And no, they would never know. No, I was living a double life, secret life. No one knew at all. How could they?
And why? So like what held you back from saying, Pastor, I need help?
Why did we not? What held us back from seeking help? We just did a few episodes talking about this. One, I didn't want help at the time. I enjoyed getting high. Two, I thought no one knew, right? And I could do it. Three, there's no real understanding of consequences, and I didn't care who I hurt, what was happening. I didn't. It consumes you. You become someone you never thought you would.
Yeah, I mean, I would say shame, guilt, fear of man, fear of public opinion. What are others going to think? Am I even worthy to be in the church? What are the congregants going to think? Is the pastor going to allow me to stay here? Are they going to boot me from the church? I mean, there's so many things that go through your mind in a time like that.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, I don't mean to ask these questions, but you guys have a wealth of knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
What was done in the church that would help you feel as though you can come up and say, hey, I need help? Or let me rephrase that. What could have been done that would have helped you get an on-ramp to asking for help?
Yeah, I mean, this is not on any of the pastors. I did this stuff because I wanted to do this stuff. I will say, on this side of things, what I really like seeing, and we've partnered with a few of these churches, is when when addiction's talked about from the pulpit. When it's addressed, when you're told that there's resources, because I mean, for the longest time, and it's still like this in churches today, you and I have met with some.
Yeah.
It's like this today that, that's not a problem here. Is it not? Are you sure, buddy? Maybe you don't know it's a problem here, but if you're saying that this huge church with thousands of congregants, that addiction's not a problem here, man, you're not engaged. And I'm not trying to be mean. It's either that or the statistics about how many people suffer from addiction is off. Mm-hmm. I lean more towards the pastor is maybe out of touch because there's a stigma that goes to it. And that kind of brings me to my next thing, man. You meeting with these pastors, I really want to hear from you because you could hear from us, but what's some of the unique challenges that you're hearing from these pastors? Because you're sitting them down, you're having long meetings with them, you're doing a presentation, you're giving them data and stats and stuff like that. When you ask them the same questions you ask us, what are some of the challenges that you're hearing from the pastors? How can we better serve them?
Well, a lot of these things are not new. There's some things that you're going to say, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But even before I go there, I want to introduce one more stat, because this stat is what I think really helps pastors understand the connection between their responsibility to serve and minister to this space. Because Addiction.com said 30% of Protestants said because of their drug abuse issue, it caused them to second guess their faith.
Sure.
And that, there's a lot that we can talk about that maybe for another episode. But, what I found was when pastors saw that stat, it immediately pulled on their heartstrings. They were there to shepherd the people. They want to help the people. Now that they understand what a big issue it is, number one. Number two, that it's in the church, they realize suddenly, it's almost like a light bulb moment where you see this moment that they realize, okay, this is something that I probably need to give more time to, but how do I do it? And, some of the things that I heard was, we just lacked the know-how. I mean, they lack specialized training. I mean, we were talking just before the show of, I don't know if seminary has like a separate section that teaches you how to deal with this. This is a very unique niche area that the stakes are so high with this. The stakes are so high. I heard somebody say that addiction is no longer about sobriety, it's about survival. It's becomes, the death rate has gone up so much that it is imperative that we run to this. And these pastors, for the most part, they are not trained in this area.
Yeah.
Have you found that?
Well, here, let me speak. I don't want to be, just careful with your time as we've been going for a while. So I want to respond to that, and I want to kind of move on. But we've been talking about, it seemed like a theme the last 3 or 4 episodes about how addiction or sin really tries to attack the thing that's loving you, or the thing that is that you love, that doesn't want to see you hurting, doesn't want to see you. And so to hear the stat about 30% of Protestants who say, I'm second guessing my faith as I'm going through this addiction, it doesn't surprise me, because that faith is one of the things that's going to bring them out of that addiction. And so, man, it's going to be a bombarding, almost like did God really say that? Yeah. That sounds familiar. We were tempted like that in the beginning. Did he really say that you can't eat from any tree or whatever? And it's like, so people's faith coming under assault because of addiction doesn't surprise me at all. And your question back to us, what you're seeing is they're not trained. Yeah, absolutely. I think more so that not frustrates me, but I see as an obstacle is a lot of churches, man, they are serving and doing so much ministry. Mm-hmm. There's kids, there's women, there's right to life, there's abortion ministry, there's homeless ministry, there's all sorts of different, there's youth camps, there's sports ministry, all sorts of ministry. And so if we have an AA meeting in the basement on Wednesdays, that's, we're doing something. And I think if most pastors actually knew what was being taught in those meetings, they would never allow those meetings to happen. They're teaching things, and then a lot of programs that they're maybe sending people to, they're teaching things that's antithetical to what you're teaching, to what the pastor's teaching in the pulpit. And so I think education. Yeah. So they don't know, I think is fair. They're not trained, I think is fair. And so I think a part of your mission and some stuff that I'm wanting to see done is, man, these churches, these people need to know what's being taught, so you can make the right decision of where to send someone or what to have, what kind of ministry to have in your church to combat this, because this is a big deal. Right. I know you have some statistics that maybe you want to get to, but what other challenges are you seeing for the pastors?
So if they do educate their congregation, they've created for themselves a new task, right? And so part of them would be like, well, if I can look the other way right now until I figure out how to do it, I'll get to that. Because once I start the conversation, I have to finish it, right? And what that means is now you have to mobilize a ministry team. Yeah. There are limited resources, there's manpower, there's finances. And so this all kind of creates, I think, paralysis by analysis at that point, because I know their heart is to serve the people, but it seems so overwhelming. And so I think it's incumbent upon pastors and church leaders to identify a trusted source. I really do. Yeah. You can't do it all. You are.
Why recreate the wheel?
Right.
The problem is where do you find that source? Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
And obviously this is kind of rolls into, I want you to talk about, because you've been working really hard. I think God's given us at S2L a really big vision for some things, and you're the tip of the spear that He's called to do it. we're doing what we're doing, but you, with your experience at such a time as this, your high level experience in ministry, high level, you're a pastor of a church, so you know the church, you know ministry, and then high level experience in the corporate world. Man, the things that you've created that I've seen, I want to talk about as we're running out of time. It's just such a time as this to get the church aware of this is what's going on. This is what addiction is. At S2L, we believe addiction is idolatry. That we're exchanging the glory of God and His promises for bootleg pleasures that always fail us. But man, there can be some serious medical situations inside of that. You need to educate the pastor where a medical detox could be needed. But you do not tie your identity to it. You do not say, I am this. You do not have a God of your own understanding and these kind of things, which is being peddled and pushed in the secular world.
Yeah, and part of creating all this is because I've walked in those shoes. In Miami, when we pastored in Miami, I pastored alongside of a pastor who was a mental health counselor. And what did that mean? That meant that the people he was treating, if they were open to spiritual guidance, he would introduce them to me.
Oh, cool.
And so I did the best I could, but can I tell you, brother, I look back now and I said, boy, I wish I knew then what I know now. I wish I had a trusted partner that I could say, this is above my pay grade. I don't know how to handle this. And I have someone's life, someone's soul in my hands. And I care enough to be humble and say, I need help. And I think that's also another thing that we can struggle with as pastors, saying, I need help. Yeah. And I think there's clear biblical precedent for that. Jethro with Moses, Acts 6, gather together, men to do these things so that we're not neglecting the word and prayer. And so it's okay to say, I need help. It's okay to say, I need help. I would say if there's one thing I would say to pastors today, it's okay to say, I need help. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, we are one church and God has gifted us all differently. And when these giftings come together, boy, we see the beauty of and the fullness of what God is doing through His church. Yep. And so that's really the essence of why I've created these. I'm creating things that I know I needed.
That's so good.
Does that make sense?
That's so good. Anything you want to add?
No, I mean, just something I'm gathering from the conversation. I love the analogy you put, paralysis by analysis. We talked about all the challenges that pastors already face, all the challenges that churches already face. But what we also talked about, there are ministries already out there that are skilled and equipped and well-ran oiled machines that, man, God has called them into the addiction recovery space. God has equipped them. They know what they're doing. They're ran by the right people that can be a vital resource to partner with the church, that can take a load off of their plate, who know how to disciple these men and women out of the challenges that they are currently facing in active addiction. And by doing so, coming alongside the church and helping their congregation rise up, and become the men and women of God that they are called to be, instead of bearing this burden and weight of getting that paralysis by analysis. It's like, oh my gosh, if I address this about addiction, then I have to do X, Y, and Z behind it. And that sounds just like a daunting task. We already have a million different plates spinning to open up, an addiction recovery ministry and then get all the people to come and volunteer and find a pastor. It just seems overwhelming, but there are solid Christ-centered addiction recovery facilities out there in the state of Tennessee that can be a valuable resource to these churches. And I think more partnerships would be so significant to recovery in general and to people finding freedom from addiction.
That's right. And so we got about 5 minutes left here, and I really want to hear what you've done. I want to hear. I love the way that you're approaching this, man. It's I wish I had this. And so when this podcast comes out, this program that you've done and all of the things that should have launched and gotten going, and so you can give websites and all this stuff by then. But tell us a little bit about what you created. It's called Recovery in Christ. Right. Recovery in Christ. And it's like you said, man. And if a few weeks ago we had Dr. Monty Berkson here, he's sitting in that very chair, and he is big on. He worked for the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services for a while, and I think the state got it right. They were going to the churches because, like you were talking about, the churches are established. Mm-hmm. They're here. if we could just equip and train them, man, a big wave can happen. And so I guess that's a part of the calling that God's given us. Not only are we to serve men and hopefully this time next year, maybe women as well with a facility, but also train the church and what that could look like. So tell us a little bit about Recovery in Christ. I believe we're going to have some graphics up right now because I've already seen some of that awesome stuff that he's created. And Los, you probably were one responsible for creating the graphics. I don't know if Carl has the graphic design down or not, but
That's his area.
okay.
That's good stuff. So so Recovery in Christ, this is our solution. This is our filling in the gap of what we've seen, what I've experienced, and I've got to guarantee you that what most pastors have experienced. So they're church wraparound services. So the way we look at this issue is we look at it in three ways: preventative, we look at it at intervention, and then we also look at it as transition. And those three things, we use the acronym ACT: advise, confront, and transition. Advise is that first phase. This phase includes like education and includes anything that's preventative in nature. Confront is obviously when there is an issue, there is the intervention to help people go into treatment and make that decision to seek help and also get the treatment from a Christ-centered facility.
Yeah.
I don't want to go off a tangent, but there is a big difference
Amen.
between Christ-centered and faith-based. I have a friend who lost his brother to in a program that was faith-based. His biggest concern to me, his biggest complaint to me, was that he found out that they only had a faith-based track,
Yeah.
and it was optional.
Don't get me started.
They thought all this time,
Well, it was marketed to them. Not that they thought. It was marketed to them because they were probably looking for faith-based. And so they had some kind of money on Google. Don't get me going right now. And who knows who was teaching this optional faith-based tract. Absolutely important that you know the difference between Christ-centered and faith-based, which I hope you do. But also, there's a radical difference than just the regular secular way and Christ-centered as well. But that's another podcast. Or you could go back. I think we've done 30 of them on that topic. But go ahead.
yeah. But
So
he
good
had
points,
said
though.
once he heard about S2L, you almost heard a sigh as I was talking to him on the phone, and it broke my heart because I know he said this to me. I wish I would have known about S2L before my brother passed. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we inform the church, that we inform the pastors that there are and there is a genuinely Christ-centered program out there that legitimately puts Jesus on the throne and legitimately offers freedom from addiction through the power of Christ. And so after that confront stage is the transition stage. That's post-recovery, right? There needs to be training and there needs to be mentorship. And so we've developed services that are free to the church that help them in that preventative stage, as well as the transition stage, which is the post-recovery. That's free to the church because it's our heart. And I tell this to pastors all the time. I said, look, I pray I never have to talk to you about this again. I want a new job. I pray that this addiction issue goes away completely.
Yeah.
But until it does,
too, yeah.
we have to get real about serving the people in front of us. And that means not waiting till it's an issue. That means talking to the church before it is. Because a lot of times, you think of it in terms of just getting prevention. Think about the youth. There are those who haven't tried it yet, and there are dabblers. They're very different people that you got to speak to before those dabblers move into abuse and addiction. How great would it be if we got to the point where we can lower those numbers because we are helping people make godly choices before it's an issue. And when there is an issue, there's a Christ-centered program that's going to first lead people to Christ and then handle the rest. And that's what I've seen here. But the third phase of it, which is the transition phase, seems to be the phase that people really gravitate to, these pastors really gravitate to. Because in the beginning, the preventative stage, we have, church, we have presentations where we can give them updated statistics. You got the forgotten pandemic screenings where you can bring them to the church.
And that can
You
help
bring
with the
in a
stigma.
I'm sorry?
The forgotten pandemic. The documentary can help with a lot of things: education, stigma, all of that. Yeah,
That's right. And it gets the conversation started.
yeah.
And that's what we
We've
need
sat
to
on
do there.
numerous panels of those conferences, and
So
Great questions there.
yeah. In the transition phase, this is the training and the discipleship. So we're developing a life discipleship plan. And what that life discipleship plan is, it is a structured plan that meets you where you're at, that helps you, before you leave recovery, to plan out what life is going to look like after you leave the program. It's something that the churches are going to be able to pick up very easy. I like to use this term plug and play or done for you.
Yes.
Because as a pastor, I needed that.
Yeah.
As long as I trusted you and I trust you and I do my due diligence, I need someone that's going to do some of this stuff for me because I don't have the bandwidth to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important to have a trusted source. And so in this discipleship plan, you're going to be taking them through all these things. And not everybody is going to need everything, but we want to provide a full suite of services and plans so that there could be long-term healing and long-term recovery. And so we're helping the church understand how to do that once they leave recovery. In that section, I just want to mention a few things. We also have the Williamson College Scholarship, 50% discount for S2L graduates, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, Chitty, did you take advantage of that program?
I did. I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Ministry Leadership from Williamson College with that tuition discount. So it was hefty. It was nice.
Congratulations, man. Congratulations.
Graduated with honors and also was chosen by his peers and staff to speak at the graduation.
Wow.
Yeah, but that scholarship afforded me the ability to pay for it out of pocket as I went through school, and I graduated with no
huge.
loans, which
That's
was
huge.
huge benefit of that scholarship.
Yeah.
I mean, this is part of what's needed post-recovery, right? And so this is one of the elements. We have the life discipleship success plan. We have the Williamson College Scholarship. We have the Lost and Found discipleship material.
Which
This
is interesting.
biblical
I'll talk
material.
about the Lost and Found. Carl and I, we were meeting with a church and kind of having similar conversations, but really just the difference between Christ-centered and what's the secular AA and NA is teaching today. By the end of that meeting, the pastor looked at both of us and was like, hey, I'm not doing AA out of my church anymore. He was going to go with Celebrate Recovery or Lost and Found. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, you got to do that with kitty gloves because there's people that are really emotionally tied to that. They believe it saved their life. And I understand that, you know. God, I would say God can strike a straight blow with a crooked stick whenever he wants. But even the fact when people get so sensitive with it, it's almost like, man, you're putting your faith and your hope in the wrong thing. It's almost like it's become a cult, an idol in and of itself. But yeah, so Lost and Found, it's this book right back here that we're talking about, s2l.net. We've trained, I don't know, how many have you done? Churches
Ton.
all over the nation. Other recovery programs, they're replacing meetings with weekly Lost and Found meetings. We teach it here at S2L. It's part of our curriculum. And guys like Chitty that have taught it, we'll get on Zoom sessions. I don't know what states that you've done, but all across the country, we'll train their identified teachers and how to do this. And so we're hearing really good feedback. I just had feedback the other day about a place that's done it now for a year, and she's amazed watching these people who have walked in freedom for a year now. Right. She's actually, when are you coming out with another book? We actually have another book, and I sent her a copy of it, but it was really good feedback.
And that's available in Spanish, right?
We do have it in Spanish. I could get that available. It is translated, and it has been published in Spanish. I don't know if I have copies here.
Got
though.
it.
So.
Got it. Yeah, that's been really helpful. The other thing that I love about this portion is the Catapult live stream that you have. Now, I know that you guys do that for the most part for the guys that are currently in the program.
And alumni. Because they'll tune in from all over the country. It's on this YouTube channel. We go live on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central.
Mm-hmm. And it's all part of this post-recovery suite of services for these churches. Anybody who's going through something in their church, that they could just, if they can't make it out, they can watch that. What I do love too is what you guys do with the retreats every year. Tell me a little bit about, if you don't mind, your heart behind doing that once a year, the alumni weekend.
Oh man, we had it, I guess like I said, about a month ago when this comes out. It was cool. We to see guys come back, give testimony to the guys currently in the program, to worship with them. We actually have a little video. The link will be, if you'll throw the link in this, it's just a recap. It's a 4-minute video. It's a 3-day event. We do a worship night, a golf tournament, and a cookout. go and check out that video, and I think it'll be a good indicator. It's sweet. We do it just to encourage fellowship, to remind people that there's hope, to bring buddies back together, because there's pretty close bonds that you make with someone when you've kind of been in the pits of hell together and God rescued you. So it's pretty cool.
It almost like reignites the joy of your salvation.
Yeah.
Because it's such an intimate, special season that you're in. A lot of these guys encounter the Lord for the first time in the program. And so being back around those individuals for a weekend just reminds you of God's goodness, his faithfulness, his mercy, his grace. Life pulls us a million different ways. So to have one weekend where all guys come together and just be reminded of how good God really is, what they've been delivered from, set free from, the life that they now live that they thought was never possible. Man, it's just a beautiful reminder of how great the God that we serve is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all you have to do is step into that room, and you can feel that. You can see that by the way they interact with one another and their gratitude to God.
Yeah. Well, Carl, man, I'm thankful for you. This thing's just getting started. I'd love to have you back in 6 months and see what God's done. It's just the vision that God's given S2L. Didn't always know what it meant, but when we first felt like it was something that he was wanting us to do to get licensed, that came with a few other things. It was training other recovery programs to get licensed, equipping the church, and from the rooms of recovery to the revival of a nation. And so what you're doing, man, it's really thankful to have you on the team. You're doing great work. I hope some of these graphics that came up, what are some of the websites? Can they go to some of the websites?
Sure,
or would you?
Sure.
So obviously S2Lrecovery.org, that's for the program. If you or someone you know is struggling, come check us out. Give us a call. We'd love to stand in the gap for you. But if you are a church ministry worker, or you want to send this to a ministry, your church pastor or something like that, there's some resources. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we're going to get you out of here, man.
Sure.
You're a busy man.
I'll just point you right to the websites. There's so much on there that starts the conversation. That's recoveryInChrist.com.
recoveryInChrist.com.
And then the other resource we have is theforgottenpandemic.com to give you more information.
Pandemic. If you're interested in doing a Forgotten Pandemic conference, it gets the conversation started. We have a panel of professionals that do Q&A. It's a 40-minute documentary. Theforgottenpandemic.com, recoveryInChrist.com. Carl, you're the man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Anything else?
I think that's it, baby.
That's life after addiction. You better believe it.
Come on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Life After Addiction. Life After Addiction is a production of S2L Studio. For more Christ-centered addiction recovery resources, please visit s2l.net. That's S2L.net. For more information about S2L's licensed and accredited residential program, please visit s2lrecovery.org. That's S2L recovery.org.